Guys, welcome to Maverick's Arcade. My name is Chuck, and in this video we're going to be talking about Ultimarc's RGB buttons. The first one we have is the ClassicRGB button. The defining factor of this button is that it's got a concaved surface so that it feels more like an original arcade button. The other two are called Ultralux buttons, and they are pretty much the exact same. The only difference is this one's got the chrome finish and this one's got a translucent white color. Now, originally for my arcade, I ordered these chrome ones because I was building everything into wood, and I just thought the chrome edging looked a little bit cooler than the white edging. It looked a little more expensive. This one looked a little more cheap in my opinion at the beginning. However, I was extremely wrong. So the first thing we're going to show you how to do is how this one disassembles. It arrives like this, and let me switch to the overhead cam so you can see what we're doing here. So on this one, let me adjust the camera just slightly. Bring it down, bring it down. Okay, so on this one, this piece here is attached directly to the rest of the plastic. Let me bring down the brightness on this camera just a little bit. Yeah, so you can see a little bit clearer this way. So this part of the plastic here is part of the part that screws in, so that does not come out. Now, if you want to see the LED, the wire is attached inside there, but these two little pieces right here, you squeeze them, and then the button pops out the top like that. And inside you'll see there's a little spring here. And then there's the LED right in the bottom. So if you gently push that screw up, the LED will try to move up. Now really there's no point in removing it. I just wanted to show you how it is assembled. And then in there you can see there are two little grooves right in there, and that has to line up with the plastic in the switch to get back in place. And then these two little prong things here on the joystick need to line up with the hole in the circuit board and the hole on the other end of the joystick. So just very lightly push that back through and make sure that it pops through on the bottom. And you can see that's how that's connected now. The switches on all the button types are using the Ultimarc switches right here. Now the one thing about these switches is when you go to connect them, this connector here, there, and we'll put it up on that screen too. So this connector right here is the one where the common wire goes, the one that looks like a long daisy chain. This other wire right here, or this other connector right here, is where the actual signal cable goes for that specific button. And then you can see this little red notch is where the actual switch action occurs. So again, it's the same button for all of these. Let me finish up with the RGB one first so you can see that. Now, to install the switch on the RGB one, in the wires, when you're looking down, you can see there's a little groove on the side with the longer piece. You want the wires to follow that kind of channel. And then there's holes in the sides of these switches. Now, the red part will always be facing the button in a downward configuration, kind of like that. But this notch here that's closer to the switch is where you want to hook the first hole onto. So it's basically like this. And then you're going to lower it down through the slides and then push this up and then let it meet up with that other hole. So you can see the action that occurs is when you push the button, that's what pushes the little red switch right there. Now, one thing that I do not like about this classic joystick is when you go to actually install it, you have to take apart the switch, and underneath, once you've got the thing mounted, you actually need to put the switch in place after it's mounted. Now that's kind of a pain in the ass when compared to how the Ultralux buttons work. So let's first, before we go any further, we're going to take off the ring here. We're going to install this in my little test board. So over here I have cut out a piece of wood and a piece of plexiglass just for testing. So what we're going to do is we're going to, and again the wire does not come off this, So we're going to feed the wire down through the hole. Then we're going to feed our button through the hole as well. And these are 1 1/8 inch holes to fit these buttons, which is a standard size. Let me get this stupid thing in there. So now the button is all the way in, and then on the bottom side, you take the little nut thing, run the cord through it, and then tighten it down. And we go ahead and tighten that down, push it on the top, and now it's nice and tight. And again, you have to put the switch on after the fact. So you got to find, again, the side where this side here, where the long part is where you actually have to run the cables to that side. And again, the switch with the red part down, the hole first lines up on the one side, like that, and then you lower it down and let it hit the other hole on this side. So then this switch is ready. When you look up at the board, that switch is ready to be wired. So the next thing that I'm going to show you is the Ultralux buttons. And again, these are the exact same buttons. They're just different color on the shell. But the cool thing about these buttons is even though they don't have that concave action, you can put labels inside these. Now, Ultimarc does sell some pre-made labels. In addition, I had some buttons I wanted to custom label, like in my video where I made my own custom power button. I also made some labels for flippers and player 1, 2, 3, and 4 coin slots. So what you can actually do for that, I don't think I can find them here. This is annoying. I actually pulled them out for this video, but anyway, if you get some Avery labels, some clear labels, usually the ones I've found are a little bit bigger than the actual size of the button, but just figure out what the measurement is, put it in the computer, and then just, you know, cut a circle out when you're done printing them out. But the way to install these labels is on the bottom of the switch here, you have these two little prongs just like the other one. So you lightly squeeze those together and push them in, and then the button starts to come out. So we pull the button out, making sure not to lose the spring, which is right there. So we'll set the button down, pull the spring out, and then carefully this white part of the cap up on top, we'll gently go around the edge until we can pop that off the top. Now, this is a brand new button, so it's a little bit firm. There we go. So now you can see it's separated, and there's this clear or plastic disc inside. So what we do is just use a little screwdriver here just to carefully, without cracking anything, pop that loose. So then it's loose like this. Now, the Avery labels, what I've done is when I've cut it to this size, then I just stick it, because it's an adhesive label, I just stick it on there. But the ones that come from Ultimarc are just little plastic discs that are perfectly cut. So if you're going to be using standard labels for the buttons, I would say just get the Ultimarc ones, because they're already measured to fit and they just drop right in. So this is a player 2 icon button. So we just drop that right on top of the switch. Again, this white plastic piece goes back in. Now there is a little, put the flat side on the outer part of the button, and then there are 4 little notches inside the button here. So what you want to do is when you take this piece back, you want to make sure that those little notches that are in here line up, and then you just pop it back on. Whoop. Again, pop that back on, so you have the little label now on the button. And then simply just put the spring back in and squeeze this just enough to get it to go back through the switch. And the spring likes to mess with you a little bit sometimes on here, so we gotta screw with it. So we put that back in there like that, and then we look on the bottom side to line it up. And then once the button is getting this action again, where it's poking out, you know you've got it set up correctly. Now, at this point, what I like to do, because when you're mounting the buttons from the underside, say you're underneath your control panel, you can't really tell the orientation of that label real well. So what I like to do is I like to take a Sharpie marker, and I like to find out where my top dead center is on this button. So in this case, directly above back here is my top dead center. And I like to draw a little line, and that way when I'm underneath my arcade and I'm trying to line up everything, I'll be able to see that from the underside to make sure which way the top is. Now in the same way, we're going to install this switch on here. Now the instructions from Ultimarc are we put the switch in and we have it approximately lined up, and we take the little nut here. Now make sure when you're putting this part on that you're not pushing the button, because when you're pushing the button it's extending these white pieces and the button won't fit gently, or you'll have to move things around roughly. So make sure you're holding the outer part of the button, and it just goes on easier. So basically Ultimarc's instructions is to get this loose. Get it on there pretty loose, and then you'll attach this and then tighten it down more. In this case, I'm just going to tighten it down quite a bit to begin with, and then show you how the buttons install for these. So one thing that I really like about these buttons is you basically install the button into your control panel and install the switch. The LED and the switch go together. So especially when you're swapping out a whole bunch of switches, where this one you have to, the ClassicRGB, you have to break it all apart. This one you can just twist off, pull the LED out, work with everything else, and then pop it back in. And the way that works is we've got the wire. In this case, we don't have to worry about where we're running the LED cables, because they are completely free and clear of where the switch goes. But just like the other switch, the red needs to be towards wherever the top of your switch would be, like this here. And you find that first notch, pop it on there, then bring the rest of the switch down through the plastic. You kind of wiggle it in there, and you got to get around that bump there, so we lift it up just enough, and then we feel it click. So again, on this switch, this is where the common wire will go, and this is where the one specifically for this button goes. Now with this harness here, oh, one other thing to note about, about these Ultralux is this little jumper block does not come installed. You get a bunch of these jumper blocks, and these wires are free floating, and basically you will connect those wires up like so. So those little wires will slide into the jumper block and lock into place. So once you've got those wired, then you just connect the switch to this part, and then on the wire here, you'll see inside here there's two little holes right in there. You can see the little holes right there and right there, and there's two little notches on the side of this. You line those up, and what you'll see when you've got it right, so what you'll see is the button is kind of hovering over where the switch would be, and you just, sorry, the angle gets a little funny. Come on. So once it's in there, it's nice and flat. As you're holding the switch, you give it a little tug. See, and that's the problem, is my switch is not as tight as I need it to be. Let me tighten that down a little more. Like I said, Andy likes to have them loose and then put the bayonet on and then tighten it down more. My problem is it takes a good amount of force to get that switch to pop in, and if it's not tight already, then it doesn't want to lock in easy. But that's the way they recommend it. I just do mine a little different. Anyway, so I get the switch in there and I get it lined up. Sometimes this little zip tie gets in the way, but get on there, son of a bitch. So we get that in there, and once it's flush, then we twist it real quick. And that's not twisting. I hate this part. Alright, so now it popped. I had to hold the ring a little tighter, and then we'll, I guess, rotate it around one more time and hold down the lid. Maybe that's why Andy said to tighten it again after you get the switch on. Now it makes sense. So we got the switch on there, and then we got this one on there. So our next step is going to be to do the same thing on this last button. Now you may be asking, why am I worrying about installing the button if the process is exactly the same? And the reason why is because I want to show what the difference is with the way these buttons light up. So we're going to go and install the chrome one as well. So the same thing, I'm going to take this switch, I'm going to pop it right on there, starting with the one closer to the front. And then we're going to get around that plastic and let it pop. And then I'm going to take this switch panel and I'm going to drop it in there and give it a little twist, and now this button's plugged in. So again, 3 little buttons on here. They're all flush, 1 1/8 inch holes. Now I already have an Ultimarc board Ultimate IO board over here, so I'm going to go ahead and plug them in. I've already got that configured. If you need information on how to configure the Ultimarc Ultimate IO board, I already posted a video on that. As far as configuring LED blinky, I also posted a video on that. So right now I'm just using button 1 I had set for LEDs 4. So let me plug in the LED. Button 2 I was going to use for jumper pin 7. So let me plug that in. And then the last one was jumper 10. And let me plug in that one. I'll then plug in my daisy chains to the buttons. This is long. Whoop. Knocking out my top camera here. Alright. I will then plug in this daisy chain. Let's do it right about there so we still have room to maneuver. So we plug in that one. And then we plug in this one. And then the last one. And now we plug in our button switches, which I have as yellow being my first one. Which, let me make sure my orientation's right. Yep, that's my yellow. And that's my orange is the next one. I just made it apparently a little difficult to get to. Screw it. We're not testing the buttons right now anyway. Like I said, the button connections are all in the other video, but I should have 2 of these working right now. So let me just bring up a notepad and verify, yes, I have those working. So now let me bring up my LED blinky in the side window. Again, there's no reason to see that. Let's light up the first one. Now it's lit. Second one lit, and third one lit. Now here's the reason why I wanted to show you this. Let me turn down the brightness on this screen. Let me get out of that, and here we go. So let's bring this down even more. How low can we bring that? Okay, so let's turn on this light. Okay, so we're going to turn them all on and we're going to look at the differences real quick. So now you'll notice one thing that's the button right here. This is the ClassicRGB. This is the one with the concave look. Now the one thing you'll notice about it though is you can see the ring of the plastic on this button. It doesn't look as good, but for the feeling of the concave of the button, it'll be worth it. I'll go with it just for my control buttons. Now for the rest of the buttons on my control panel itself, I'm going to use these translucent Ultralux buttons. And for the rest of the buttons that are in the wood, like coin buttons or the stop and the pause button for me, or up on the back panel, they're in the wood. I'll keep the chrome for those. Now the reason why I want to use the translucent on my control panel is, let me first shut off the other lights and show you. Here's the edge of the plexiglass with the chrome light. It's doing nothing. But let me shut that off and turn on the translucent Ultralux. And as you can see, it's actually creating some light in the plexi. And you can't see it as well because the thing here. But as you can see, there's light coming through the edge here. Whereas the chrome one doesn't generate really any of that light. So for the if you have plexi, I would definitely recommend the translucent casings because it'll light up along the board, kind of like, you know, the shelves in the National Lampoon's Christmas in the 80s house. So anyway, then we'll light up this button. As you can see, it's really lighting up this plexiglass edge. So for the visual effect of lighting up the plexiglass, definitely get those translucent cases. Now, I'm going to light this back up. And again, yes, this button does show that ring effect. You do see where the plastic is molded. The Ultralux lights do a really good job of evenly distributing the LED light. And again, as far as an installation standpoint, the Ultralux are a lot easier. You can pop these on, move buttons around, pop them back in without having to redo all your wiring. This one, you kind of have to put the switch in place and then do all of your wiring with the switch mounted, which can be a pain in the ass. It also looks like the colors are a little bit, the LEDs come out a little bit different. This one's a little bit more bluish than the Ultralux. The Ultralux looks a little more of a pure white, which is definitely desirable. But that is the difference between the three buttons. That's how you mount all the three buttons, and that's how the switches work on all three buttons. So if you guys have any questions, please comment below. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please click like below. If you have any comments or suggestions, you can either comment below or email mavericksarcade@gmail.com. And if you're into home gaming, emulation, or arcade machines, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks again for watching.